Hey, everybody, welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast. This is Season 5, Episode 15, 7 Clichés We Wish Would Go Away. It kind of rhymes. I like it.
You know what I just noticed, Ryan? I think your mic might be the one, like your maybe built-in mic. It sounds a little different than normal.
Cool.
I don't know. It could just be me.
Let's go check that out.
You were correct.
Ah, there you go.
I'm glad you noticed.
For once, I did something right. So,
Hey, folks, we've been having some audio issues today as we were trying to get the podcast going. It's kind of a strange thing. We've apparently had some issues on Matthew's side and on my side. I think we have it sorted out now.
yeah, it's crazy.
How about that? Yeah, it is crazy. I don't know.
Do you think somebody wouldn't want us to talk about the topic we're about to talk about? So
yes. Yeah, we're going to rustle some jimmies or something.
It'll be fun. It's all in love, right?
Yeah.
Mostly.
Cool. Well, let's get started with the recorded portion of the audio show here. It's good to be with you all, folks. Feel free to chime in as we go throughout this episode today. If this is your first time joining us, know that we do these live typically on every Wednesday, 2 episodes each week. But you can always catch past episodes on our Facebook and YouTube channels. But probably more importantly, because it's easier to access, you can find our podcast, all 600 plus episodes of it, on your favorite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, etc., etc. Oh, and even on Audible. We're pretty much everywhere you can think to find a podcast. Chime in today with any questions or comments you may have. We'll address them as we can, and let us know where you are listening or watching from here today as well. We've got Connor viewing on Facebook. Good to have you with us, Connor. In fact, I know you sent me a message, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Let's do it. You ready?
I'm ready, man.
All right. In 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 5, Episode 15. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by Excess Sites. Today is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022, as of the recording of this episode. And I am your host, Riley Bowman. And I'm joined today by my fellow podcaster. He's also our producer and amazing dude from Ohio, where I just returned from a few days ago. Although we didn't get to see each other.
I know. It's my fault. But yeah, we're here. We're here
we
together.
Failed to mention your name, in case people didn't know. Matthew Maruster. Here he is.
We're here. We're here together. Boo. No, I'm just glad this will be a fun topic. And it was, in Ohio, we had some nice weather. And then today we had snow coming down. So it's like, why don't we throw like a little curveball to the listeners and have a little different type of podcast today, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, we had snow in Colorado while I was in Ohio, and then that moved across the country and is in your neck of the woods. And
Thank you.
Amazingly, we were back to snow today after 2 sunny days. So yeah, it's that season, isn't it? Today, folks, we were talking about 7 cliches we wish would go away. And I said I put 7 in there, but it's probably going to actually be more than that. So the number's just a number. We'll see where we end up with it. I think we've got like 18 total we could talk about. I don't know that we're going to hit all those today, though. So we're going to have fun with this. Please know that we're not here to intentionally offend anybody. Just because you use one of these phrases or have used them, know that I myself have at one time in my life used many of them as well.
Me too.
And as we go through this episode and explain why we no longer like these cliches, we'll explain those, and hopefully some of that will make sense to you as well. And at the end of the day, we're really just having some fun with this, and hopefully educate folks along the way too. So today's episode sponsored, brought to you by Gunfighter Gun Oil. Gunfighter Gun Oil is fantastic stuff. I just came back from teaching a 2-day class in Ohio. Made sure I re-lubricated my gun before. Actually, guns. I shot 2 different guns while I was there teaching that class over the weekend. A little bit of Gunfighter Gun Oil on each of them. Make sure things are running smooth. And I had 0 malfunctions throughout the weekend. And that is what we want to have. So there's many great lubricant products out there. Gunfighter Gun Oil, though, I'll tell you, it works incredibly well and is made by some fantastic, patriotic Americans right here in the good old USA. I think you'll enjoy it. So check them out at gunfighteroil.com. Also, today's episode is sponsored by Barrel Block. We actually mentioned a little bit about Barrel Block last week on the Shooter Rated Challenge episode, but it is the way to make your gun inert for dry fire practice. Jacob, I think, is going to be publishing an episode very shortly, not an episode, an article about this very thing. So basically the idea of dry firing with an unloaded gun versus dry firing with an inert gun. And here's the thing. You put a barrel block in the barrel of your gun, it's there to stay. And there's nothing going to enter the chamber of that gun or cause any issues as long as you do your part. Make sure that the barrel block is installed. And of course, we still want to handle our firearms in a safe manner, abiding by all typical, all of your standard firearm safety rules. But it's a nice extra piece of reassurance to know when you're using barrel block, you can dry fire 100% safely with that reassurance. So go to barrelblock.com today to pick up a barrel block. Available in all kinds of different calibers: 9mm, 380, 40, 357 SIG, 45. And also the rifle equivalent is known as the rifle block. And that's available in 5.56 or 2.23 Remington. But we've got some new products coming on the way at some point. I think that some of you may be interested in as well. So there you go, barrelblock.com, BARRELBLOK.com. Barrel block with a K. No C. All right, here we go. 7 cliches we would like to see go away. All right. So it's Matthew's idea for a topic.
Yeah.
So if this backfires on us and we make everybody, angry across the country, across the world, it's your fault.
It's my fault. It's not the first time I've heard that, right?
We always tell people that view us as we record these episodes live that they're welcome to chime in with comments or questions, and we'll address them as we can. And Warren on YouTube wants to know, why is the Canik Rival hard to find? And the answer to that, Warren, is I don't know. So I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more, but I do not know the answer to that question. And figured I would address that one right now, right away, because that was easy to do. So, all right. Connor just commented, let's start off with that. Full clip. Quote. Full clip, end quote. Make that go away, LOL. Well, we didn't actually address that one in our list, but I could get on board with that. Although, here's the thing. All right. So I used to get really hung up in the words of things. And I still try to call things what I think they should be called. For instance, clip versus magazine when we intend to mean a magazine, because I do think words matter. But I'm also at a point where one of the things that does kind of also bother me is when people get overly worked up over semantics of stuff, especially when they're wrong about what those things are called or were once upon a time called. And I'm not talking about the clip versus magazine thing. I do call magazines, and clips are relatively rare to come across unless you shoot a lot of M1 Garands or something. Or stripper clips, like sometimes comes with your ammunition loaded on stripper clips, and you have the means to quickly strip those rounds off those stripper clips as you reload your, I don't know, your 1903 Springfield rifle or something. I don't know, or your Mauser. I don't know. I've never actually loaded any rifles with a stripper clip before, so don't quote me on any of that as far as how to do what. But like one thing that people get really, they apply the same kind of logic, Matthew, to the whole silencer versus suppressor thing.
Mhm.
So at one time I thought I was super educated and thought, yeah, it's a suppressor, and therefore we must call it that because it doesn't truly silence the gun. And that was kind of the logic there. And the truth of the matter is the original patents on silencers were called silencers, and the language in the National Firearms Act it uses the term silencer. And so actually, you bring up a great point, Connor, that I think that there are some terms in the industry that, I mean, where possible, I encourage the correct use of things. And also, I think there's a place and a time to be correct in the usage of terms, but also I think there's a time and a place to shut your mouth, because some people, I think, make a big to do about nothing that maybe runs the risk of pushing gun owners away from our beloved community rather than helping them out. Yeah, clip kind of bugs me, when people are talking about a magazine, but I don't try to get too tore up about it. All right.
Yeah. I would agree. If it's an educational type thing, a moment for education versus like, what's the intent behind you, like pointing out, hey man, that's not a clip, it's actually a magazine. Are you like, trying to make the person feel like an idiot, or are you just trying to say, hey man, like, I don't care what you call it, but like, this is the actual word for it. Like, yeah. I'm not going to lose sleep, but it definitely sound a little bit more educated on the topic when you use the correct terminology. But it is kind of like, it does jump at you when you hear somebody say clip, right? Like, it's like, boop. But yeah, I'm with both of you guys.
So Matthew, what's your first cliche from your list that you'd like to see go away?
Yeah, these are in no order, so I'm just going to start picking them out. And then this is the first one on the list. The judge by 12. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Right? Like we hear that a lot in context of like self-defense shooting. Well, I'd rather be alive than in court than dead and in the ground. And I totally agree with that. Like, I would rather be alive and fight the battle in court than be in the ground. However, there is a third option, and that's to be neither, and to use like, avoidance and proper defensive use of defensive force, so you don't end up in a kind of gray area where the prosecutor wants to try to charge you with something, right? Mm-hmm. So my point in making that go away is there's a third option, and that's the option we should be shooting for.
Yeah. I mean, that is the option that we have preached on this podcast since the very beginning, which is know and understand the laws, and you can successfully defend yourself and remain within those laws, make good, wise, sound choices and decisions. And so, yeah, it becomes an excuse really to, I think that is easy for some people to justify not having to apply much thought to legal and tactical situations. That, well, if I find somebody in my house, I'm just going to shoot him, and I'm going to shoot him dead. And it's like, okay, yeah, I understand that in most contexts, finding somebody in your house that shouldn't be there, an intruder, in other words, that's probably lawful to do. You obviously want to check the laws of your state or locality or your jurisdiction, but But I mean, it could also be that somebody is in your house that you think shouldn't be in there, but the reality is they're not who you think they are, meaning they're not an intruder. So I'm actually reminded of our company president, Jacob Paulson, story he once shared. I think he even shared it on this podcast, where many years ago, when he was quite a bit younger and I think single at the time, even he was, I don't know, I don't remember all the circumstances, but found himself entering into his brother's home where he was going to stay that night, but I think got there way later than was intended, or forgot to talk to his brother ahead of time, or I don't remember exactly. But he had access to his brother's home and certainly had an invitation to stay there, but ended up going in and at some point surprising his brother, who was armed with a firearm and could very easily have shot him had his brother not realized who he was, sort of thing. So those kind of situations.
And it probably would have been legal. Like you're justifiably, just legally justified, right? Like a horrific outcome, but
yep. At the very least, a tragic accident, which we've shared many stories like that on the podcast that are similar to that, and it's maybe you aren't charged with anything, so I guess it bypasses that judged by 12 piece, but now you have hanging over you the fact that not you but your loved one is the one that's being carried by 6, and you're responsible for that because you thought that no matter what somebody enters my home, I'm going to pull that trigger, rather than being prudent and smart and making good decisions about it and identifying your target and stuff. And I got some other things along those lines coming up here today as well. A related saying I think that bothers me as well, Matthew, for similar reasons, is the whole, well, just say that you were in fear for your life, as if this is the magic statement that is your get out of free jail card. And it's not, okay, because there's a lot more nuance to self-defense shootings or situations than just, well, I was scared and so I shot them. It goes deeper than that. There are certain circumstances that need to be in place to be legally justified in pulling the trigger. And again, it becomes another excuse to, because I mean, human beings are inherently lazy. We are, and so we'd rather not put in the time or the effort to study or understand the law or to ponder about these things in any amount of depth. And by that, like, running different scenarios and things through your mind and like what ifs and, all that preparation and the attitude and the mindset, that side of it takes work and effort and understanding. And it's far easier just to say, well, I'm just going to say I was in fear of my life. And well, and even if that's not good enough, well, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. You see how that kind of, it's of a similar vein of thought, these two phrases that we're starting off with here today.
Agreed.
Yeah. Fear, by the way, fear for your life is in many statutes kind of is a piece of a justified self-defense claim. It may not be articulated quite in that way, but like in Colorado here, we have a phrase in the statute that says, that basically where it refers to being in imminent danger of bodily injury or of death or great bodily injury, right? And well, that would imply there's probably a fear factor involved. But it doesn't say that just because you fearful, because I might be scared because somebody says something threatening to me that may not escalate to a level of deadly force. I might be scared because somebody got up in my face and was offensive to me or pushed me around a little bit, so like there's more to it than that. And every situation is unique and different. And there's got to be a set of articulable facts that we can point to and be like, well, this is why. This is, because it may come to that. At the end of the day, when you make a self-defense claim, that is an affirmative defense. And you basically, if you make that claim, then you're admitting to essentially, you're admitting to committing homicide, or at least attempted homicide, in a justified manner. And by so doing, you've got to be able to explain the circumstances for why you did what you did. And simply saying I was in fear, well, there's got to be something that backs that up.
Right. Some objectively reasonable, the fear has to be objectively reasonable. It can't just be, well, I just was afraid. Well, I mean, you can't be afraid of a 2-year-old. That's not objectively reasonable. Right. So,
and the reasonableness standard, that's a very important piece. And as a certain famous attorney, Andrew Branca, has said before, you don't have to make perfect decisions, but we have to make reasonable ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always going to be reasonable to say I was in fear for my life, but I can't explain clearly what circumstances created that fear. So keep that in mind. All right, what's next? What do you got?
All right, let's go to the gun that feels the best is the best one for you, or some version of, well, this one works for me, type argument. And it typically, I hear this when, you tell somebody, hey, the Ruger SR22 is probably not the ideal concealed carry gun for you. And they said, well, I'd rather have this one, and this one, the best gun is the one that I have, and therefore it's the best gun. But it's kind of taking out of context, like, well, yeah, but why not carry the best gun and also have a gun that is good for concealed carry, right? Like, because the one that you carry might not be the best concealed carry gun, right? And so just to, I'm not exactly sure what people mean when they just say, well, carry whatever gun feels the best, or the one that's in your hand is the best one for you. It's kind of just, I don't think it's good advice to give to somebody who's trying to find a gun that works for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think this comes from sort of two places. I think one, this is its own cop-out of and I understand where the place it comes from, because I see this in online forums or groups, Facebook groups and things, where someone maybe says, hey, I'm thinking of getting this gun, or this is the gun I got, or something to that effect. And maybe it's not an ideal choice, and people will start sort of dragging that individual. And, you might have someone that comes in that tries to defend them by saying, well, the gun that feels best for you, or whatever, like that's the best one for you. Like, this one feels best to me. This fits my hand the best. This is comfortable to me. And therefore because it's comfortable, therefore I'm going to be, my performance will be better with it, et cetera, et cetera. There's kind of this whole place where it's like this anti-judgmental approach of, hey, it's cool, bro. Just carry or use the gun that you think is best, or that feels best to you, or feels right. And I understand that, but it is a cop-out, okay? Because I think that when we approach things from a more intellectual perspective, then we should look at things and try to, just like these other things we've already talked about so far. There's kind of a interesting trend here in the thinking, if you will, or the excuse making, if you will. From an intellectual perspective, if we were evaluating the right gun for me, then we'd actually list out some different factors and then see how various guns stack up to those. I mean, I'll give you one example. Reliable. Reliability is an important factor for a defensive gun, because for obvious reasons, if that gun, I need to know and have confidence that gun's going to function. But what does that mean? What is reliability really? Well, don't want to completely derail this podcast. And we've explored that, I think, a little bit in some past episodes. But here's one thing I will say is that there are some guns out there that have a reputation for reliability, right? And by that, there's some common, some big name brand guns that most everybody knows and is familiar with that are known for being good guns, solid guns that have a performance and a history of a reliability. Some of that will be evidenced by the fact that maybe they're used by a bunch of law enforcement agencies or military or private security, even, et cetera, because those agencies or organizations select a gun based upon factors like reliability. I mean, the military, in doing its evaluation of the modular handgun system contract, had a pretty rigorous reliability test of various standards. And there's a very, like, I'm not going to try to derail this, but you can dig into that a little bit and find the actual language, the actual criteria that they weighed these guns on in terms of reliability. Is a very specific definition of what the military considered reliable enough or not. So my point is that by this, I'm talking about, this is one factor. And I think if we are being truthful ourselves and we're going to carry a gun for personal defense, that we want to carry something that we know will work. Because if we aren't, I think that's kind of dumb. Sorry to say. Because I think you don't really take your personal safety and security all that seriously. And so choosing something that isn't known particularly for having a history of performance and reliability, then that's, you're kind of playing with fire there, so to speak. So the statement comes from a good place of, hey, it's cool, bro, just carry what feels best to you, or the handgun that fits you the best, that's the one for you. And another thing that, and I've even said this even not that long ago, until I kind of had a change of opinion on this, or a change of approach, was, oh, you want to figure out what gun works best for you? Well, go to the gun range, go to your local gun range that rents guns, and rent a whole bunch of different ones and try all these different ones and shoot them all. And then, see which one you like best. Problem with that is that, particularly if you're a newer gun owner, how do you know what actually feels best to you if you don't even know how to grip the gun yet, or grip it correctly? And maybe the way you currently grip is not ideal in terms of how to shoot it the best. And so you think, well, this feels good to me. But then as you get training or you become more experienced and you learn, oh, wait, there's a better way of doing things, a better way of gripping my gun, for instance. Maybe the grip that you were using, now that you correct that, no longer is so-called comfortable with how that gun feels in your hands. Or maybe it's even where you were not gripping the gun high enough, and now that you are gripping it high enough on the grip underneath the beaver tail, maybe the shape and size of your hand, now that slide bites your hand or cuts the webbing of your hand, stuff like that. So you might not have realized that before you actually learned how to shoot more properly. So I mean, it could go on and on and on about this, and like I said, I think we've touched on this before, but the gun that feels the best is the best one for you. That I don't care for that saying anymore.
Agreed.
You touched on works for me as you were introducing that one, and which was something I had written under my list, and it's a similar attitude that, and it again becomes kind of a lazy man's justification for, well, it works for me. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, all right, good for you, bro. And ultimately, I don't care what other people do. I mean, I do care from a point of, like, I want to be helpful. I want to help other people succeed. That's part of who I am as an individual and part of my job too. But, if you tell me at the end of the day, like, this is what works for me and I like it. All right. Okay. I suggested something else, or suggested that that's maybe not the most reliable, durable choice, but all right, carry on, do your thing. I hope it works, well for you.
Yeah.
But be careful with phrases like this. Be careful. I guess the whole point here is, and I said that there's kind of a common trend or theme to some of what we're talking about at the beginning part of these cliched statements. That a lot of times these cliches just become a way of not really doing critical thought, of performing critical thought about the actions we're taking, the decisions we're making, the choices we're making about gear.
Yeah, I mean, a Charter Arms 38 Special might be the best gun for you, and it might feel the best, but it also may not. And we shouldn't just boil it down to, well, this is the gun I have, it works for me, and it feels good in my hand, so therefore I'm going to reject anybody saying, hey, have you thought about this or that? And so I'm with you. I've been very reserved in giving my opinion on a lot of things, and because unless somebody comes and asks me, hey, what's your opinion? I've kind of almost become more of just like, hey, I don't even want to, because people become very, defensive about their purchase. And I get it. Like you've invested some money and you don't want somebody to tell you, hey, there's might be something better out there. So, I'm very careful in giving my opinion when it's not asked for.
Yeah. Yep. Great comment from Christy. She says a lot of times the ranges don't even rent the nice guns out either. They're not usually clean. Sights are off. They have issues. In fact, I was just at a range. They pulled a rental gun out of the case that legit had some issues with the trigger. So that would probably not be the best introduction to that particular gun that a person might have. That definitely might sway one's opinion about what they think is best based on the fact that there's a gun that's not performing as it should. needs some help, needs some maintenance. What's your next one, buddy?
All right, let me pick one off here. How about okay, this is going to be a good one for you guys, all right? So make sure you guys are sitting down. The Second Amendment is my permit. I get it, man. Like I get it. The Second Amendment is in the Constitution. It should, like it's not up for debate, but in reality, that's not going to hold up in court. Like you're not going to, if you're a convicted felon and you have a firearm and you get stopped by the police, and you just say, hey, the Second Amendment's my permit, it's going to be a tough defense. I mean, I don't think that that's going to go very far. So I get the sentiment behind it, but I think that, I think that we just need to be a little bit more, especially when we're dealing with people that are anti-gun or, coming from a point of, well, why do you need this or that? And we just boil it down to the Second Amendment is my permit. We lose a lot of the intellectual kind of like persuasion, or being able to persuade people to our side or to our understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a tricky one, because first of all, we want to advocate for being good, decent, law-abiding people, right? At the same time, I do see and observe many of the same restrictions on the Second Amendment that many of you see and observe. And I don't like a lot of those. I don't like any of them, frankly. And the Second Amendment is my permit becomes this justification that I'm just going to do what I want anyway, regardless of the consequences and regardless of how it reflects on the rest of the 2A community if you get caught. Give you an example. This will probably be featured in an upcoming podcast of ours. There was a gentleman in Indiana, was it? Or Ohio? Thereabouts. I might have been Ohio, that got caught at a high school sports game.
Ohio. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, it was kind of in the Columbus area, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the town I used to live in before I moved to this. I don't know the guy though.
So a dude is at a school sporting event on school grounds, right? And is carrying his gun, and maybe it could be a couple things. Maybe he forgot he had it on him. He just was just a honest mistake. Or maybe he's one of those that was the Second Amendment's my permit, and by golly, I'm gonna, what's the word? What's the phrase? I can't think of it all of a sudden. Like I'm gonna not comply with that because I believe that any law restricting the Second Amendment's an unjust law. So maybe that was his justification. He decides to carry the gun onto school grounds, into a school, to a sporting event, because by golly, that's my right. Well, okay, that's fine, bro, but don't get caught. I'm not advocating for any illegal activity, by the way, just for purposes of protecting the liability of this podcast. But if that's the choice you're going to make, don't get caught, and don't make it reflect poorly on the rest of us, because I promise you that does not look good in the battle for Second Amendment rights. If we project the attitude we're a bunch of crazy cowboys and we're going to do whatever we want, the other side won't want to engage with us.
Yeah.
And that becomes a losing proposition. And so, in fact, provides even more fuel and ammunition for the other side to want to restrict rights further, because, well, these people are crazy and insane. So we gotta get them. We gotta keep them in check. And so, yeah.
And I'm not going to put any words in your mouth, because I know your stance on this, and I even wrote an article about that. And in the article, I even say, man, like, I think not allowing the dude who was concealed carrying to walk onto the property and cheer for his kid in a wrestling match is stupid. It didn't do, it didn't protect anyone arresting this guy and issuing a warrant for his arrest. Didn't make the world a safer place. It didn't, if public safety is the goal, it didn't do anything of that. In fact, that was probably the guy that if somebody came in to shoot the place up would be the only armed one there. So I'm not against, us standing by and saying, hey, these laws are stupid. They're irrelevant. They're in violation of what we believe the Second Amendment to be. But at the same time, and if you, like you said, Riley, if you don't want to abide by that and you make the decision, hey, I'm going to take the consequences if I get caught, that's, hey, go for it. But we can't just cop out and just say, well, the Second Amendment is my permit, because, people are, we have to be able to understand the law. And if we debase it down to like the Second Amendment is my permit, I'm not even going to care about, because it happens a lot when we are promoting like the legal boundaries by state book, and we say, hey, these are the laws of the states, don't, when you travel, and they're like, oh, I don't care. Like, I don't want to know the law because the Second Amendment is my permit. It's like, I get it, man, but like you want to know the law, and if you know the law, then you can, tell these legislators, hey, this is an unjust law and I want it repealed or whatever, but we can't just avoid the conversation just by saying the Second Amendment is my permit. That's kind of my sentiment. And I don't know if I put words in your mouth, but
no, I think you articulated that very well. Absolutely. And I had the same thought about that gentleman. I thought it really is a shame it has to come to this, because by virtue of the fact that he went into that school, attended this event, left, and nobody got hurt. Weird, crazy, right. Like, he's the last person we should be concerned about. He's one of the good guys, right? Criminals are going to do what they want to do anyway. Those are the guys we need to be actually concerned about. So anyway, let's move on to the next. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. This is an age-old cliche, idiom, whatever you want to call it. Been around a long time, at least as far as I know. I've heard it all my life. Well, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Well, and we could make a whole podcast episode probably about this one phrase, and maybe we'll do that sometime. Who knows? But this is often used as again, like an excuse to make certain adjustments to your shooting, that maybe aren't necessarily the right adjustments to make. I mean, for instance, some would say, well, or if somebody came to you and was like, why am I missing this target? And maybe the response would be, well, slow down and get your hits, because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Well, slowing down and getting your hits never did anybody any good in a gunfight. If time was of the essence. Okay. Now we got to get our hits, clearly, because if we don't get our hits, that's a problem, right? That just means it's kind of like the podcast I just did with Wayne Dobbs last week. We talked about this very thing a little bit, about as far as how important it is to get your hits, because failure to do so just prolongs the encounter, and that's its own problem, in terms of the time variable itself. But if chances are, this is really where it comes from. For me, this is my opinion on this. If somebody is missing at a faster pace, because they have substantial technique issues or fundamental type issues, chances are those are also going to be issues when they go slow as well. So they end up still missing the target, but just missing it even slower than they did before. And that's really the problem with this. Just because we slow down does not automatically mean it's going to fix the problems. Now, a person could be shooting faster than what they can see. They could be shooting faster than what their skill level currently permits. But to simply say it's as simple as slowing down and that's automatically going to fix their issues, not necessarily always the case. Here's the other thing. Slow is not necessarily the same thing as smooth. Smooth is not necessarily the same thing as fast. Slow is not fast. Fast is not slow. Smooth is neither of those and is just smooth, and whatever the heck that means. Like, honestly, ask yourself the question, what is smooth anyway?
So words matter.
We could apply some definition to that. But really, like, what does it matter? And does it really matter if I'm so-called smooth, if I get the job done? I've seen some people that pretty good shooters, but they didn't really look smooth. I've also seen people that so-called looked smooth and weren't very good. And I've seen an example of both of those, where they looked smooth and cool and fast. So I think the reality is, and why this phrase bugs me, is that slow is just slow, fast is just fast, and smooth is just smooth, in whatever context you define smooth as. So you're either fast or you're slow. And then the other piece is that those are relative terms. Really. Like, well, how fast is fast and how slow is slow? To one person, what's fast is slow to another, and vice versa. So it's really just, it's one of those well-meaning, well-sounding phrases that kind of doesn't really mean anything when you actually break it down. I think where, the basis of it is, well, when we're developing skill, sometimes we need to start somewhere, and we need to kind of step our way through what the various steps of that skill are. And that usually means we do it at a deliberate pace as we learn the motions and the actions and the various parts and pieces of whatever that motion or skill is. And then as we get better at that skill, quite often we look somewhat mechanical when we're learning new things. And as we get better, then that smooths out and the mechanicalness goes away and we become smooth. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're automatically going to become fast, because I've seen some people that struggle to do that. I've had shooters in classes in recent history that were pretty good shooters, pretty solid fundamentals, but they had a big mental block that prevented them from going any faster than they currently could. And they certainly were capable of going faster. And the answer wasn't that, well, no amount of smoothness was going to help them go faster, is my point. Sometimes to go fast, we have to just go fast. We have to learn to be okay with going fast. For a lot of people, going fast puts them outside their comfort zone. And we have to become uncomfortable for a time to learn how to go fast. Anyway, all that to say that slow, smooth, fast, none of those things are the other things. And none of those things automatically lead to the other things. So work on the things that we need to work on. I don't know how else to say it, but stop saying that if I do it slow, I'm going to turn into smooth. And if I'm smooth, I'm going to get fast. It's not as simple as that.
Agreed. How about this one? I'm trying to choose from a few here. How about this one? I only need a certain number of rounds because I'm not in Fallujah. Or if I need to shoot more than, 3 rounds, I must be doing something wrong or something like this. This is normally comes up when I'm talking to somebody about the capacity of their gun. When I just ask them, like, let's say they have a 5-shot revolver and I say, that's fine. But, what if you had to engage 2 people or, do you think 5 rounds is enough? And instead of contemplating on that problem or just wondering about that, they deny that scenario and just say, in the scenario in my mind, if I need to shoot more than 3 times, I'm either missing or, that's a scenario that only the, forces in Iraq have to deal with. And so it doesn't apply to me. And it kind of goes back to that intellectual, just kind of like you're offhand, just rejecting something so you can justify whatever you have. And like I said, that 5-shot revolver might be the best choice and you might be fine with 5 rounds. That I'm not saying that you're wrong for that. I'm just saying to think of it as, if I only need X number, I only need this many rounds. If I need more than that, so I'm not going to even think about carrying a spare mag. I'm not going to think about the capacity of my firearm. I think you're just setting up yourself for not maybe choosing the optimal gun for the purpose, potentially.
Yeah. We can certainly be successful in self-defense shootings with relatively small, relatively low capacity guns. Mm-hmm. I have also heard this argument that, well, I only need so many rounds to get the job done. That's a very bold, very confident statement. Yeah, that's very bold. And I understand the sentiment. Well, I'm going to make them count. Well, here's the thing. You have to make them count. And you cannot guarantee the circumstances of the fight you'll find yourself in. Nobody can. Well, I'm not going to get involved in things I shouldn't, that would require more than that. How do you know? Seriously, how do you know? We don't always get to choose our enemy combatant, so to speak. He is who he is, or they are. In recent history, we've shared numerous examples of people that defended themselves against multiple attackers. Last week on Justified Saves episode, we had armed robbery attempt of a gentleman. There was like 4 teenagers, and it said they were armed with handguns. Didn't specify if it was 1, 2, or all 4 of them, but that they were armed with guns. That's a fight that guy probably didn't pick. Now, could we go, if we had more details, could we break it down and be like, well, he chose to go into a part of town he shouldn't have at a certain time of the day? Well, maybe he didn't have a choice. It's like our pizza delivery driver, the guy that was shot in his elbow. I think I interviewed him on the podcast even. It's a couple of years. It's going back a ways, actually. dude, well, it wasn't just his elbow, it was like his side or hip and his arm and elbow, but he got, struck a couple times by gunfire. That's his job. And he had to deliver pizzas wherever he had to deliver pizzas. Well, you don't have to choose that job. That's a dangerous job to get into. Oh, okay. We don't always get to choose our circumstances. Sometimes we have to take the job we can get. My point being is I do my best to avoid situations or avoid putting myself in situations where it might be dangerous or hazardous to my health. And I hope that that's true for all of us. But are there times where we don't get to choose the circumstances of our fight? Yeah, there are, unfortunately. And that also means we don't get to choose how many rounds will be required to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I could be very effective with a 5-round revolver. Okay. Unfortunately, because I limit myself to those 5 rounds, and maybe I'm carrying a stripper clip of extra rounds or a speed reloader or whatever, but that's probably not very practical since reloads hardly ever happen in civilian encounters anyway, and probably aren't happening with a J-frame revolver. But yeah, I'm limiting myself to the 5 rounds. That means I've forced a limitation upon myself, and so I'm going to have to work with that. All right, so I think it's a fair point. I'm also reminded, and this will be the last, I think the last one we cover for the episode today. Your pick there of I only need so many rounds because I'm not in Fallujah, is very similar to the cliche I chose, which was the age-old, 3 rounds, 3 yards. Is all, that's what the typical gunfight will be, and that's all I really need. I'd like to see the whole 3 rounds, 3 yards thing. And sometimes you'll see it appended to that in 3 seconds. I'd like to see that phrase die. Not because it isn't true, let's say. I've heard some different things that the statistics surrounding that may not be, that the numbers may actually be different than the 3 yards, 3 rounds, 3 seconds, so-called the 3 and 3 rule. But that's, regardless if those numbers are actually different or not, it shouldn't matter. That is your average gunfight, which means that there are, if we're in the middle of the bell curve, there's a pretty wide swath on either side of that where circumstances are going to be further and shorter in terms of the engagement distance. And there's going to be circumstances where I have to shoot more than 3 rounds, and also ones where I don't shoot any at all. And it doesn't take very far going out from the middle of that bell curve, the mean of 3 rounds, and find myself at, I just shot my 5th round. Or, I don't really need sights or very effective sights anyway because I'm only shooting at 3 yards anyway. Well, you don't get to choose your fight, and you might need to shoot farther than 3 yards. I'm sorry to say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's further than that, I won't get involved. I'll just turn and run the other way. Says the dude that probably can't outrun the 17-year-old thug. That's peak, maybe 7 peak. There's some 17-year-old thugs, unfortunately, out there that should be at home and should be with their mamas, but they're not. And they are a lot quicker and a lot faster and a lot meaner than you.
Mm-hmm.
So stop spewing the 3 rounds, 3 yards, 3 seconds BS as a justification to be poor and lackadaisical in your skill and your equipment choices. That's what I got to say about that. Because I think that's a lazy man's excuse.
Yeah. Can't argue with that, man. We're just trying to make people think about their choices and think about what they do. And, like I said, I got planks in my eyes, right? I'm not like just out here casting stones at people, but, where we see I think we picked out some of the ones where we see that sentiment kind of leading somebody down to kind of astray from maybe the optimal gear choice or mentality or, decision making, right? So this isn't just like, hey, I don't like people saying, this versus that. It's more, okay, say whatever you want, but if it leads you down to selecting, a gun that might not be right, or limiting your ability because you're trying to, just go by slow, smooth, fast type thing, then we're just trying to kind of get you out of that paradigm and kind of shift your mind to, well, maybe those things aren't necessarily gospel. Maybe I need to kind of challenge those beliefs and see if I don't get better from that.
Yeah. That's spot on, man. I mean, that's where so much of this really comes from, is a desire for everyone, you guys listening to us or watching us or wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I want you to really think about what it is that you do. All those things, your actions, your gear, your decisions, all that. I want you to really think about it. I want you to make good, wise, educated decisions and not just rely on these outdated, lazy statements that brings you comfort in the midst of cognitive dissonance. As human beings, we don't like cognitive dissonance. It's uncomfortable. It makes us question what we think we know. And we don't naturally want to do that. And what I want to inspire you to do is to think for yourself and to push the envelope, to push yourself into those uncomfortable regions, because that's where growth occurs. That's where we learn and we grow and we get better. And then with that comes greater understanding and greater degrees and a broader base of experience. And it's all about understanding the why behind the things that we do and the things that we choose and the things that we decide. It's about understanding the why and not just doing the thing and then coming up with a lazy excuse for it. That's what this is about. And all these phrases have a commonality in that. Now, today I think we've covered 8. Actually, see, I told you we'd probably do more than 7, as the title of the episode suggests. 8 common gun industry cliches that we'd love to see go away or die. We've got others. Maybe we'll do a part 2 in a future episode, unless we get so much hate mail over this episode, and then it makes us rethink our strategy.
Could be.
And don't, you know what? If we said something today that makes you upset, well, don't take it so seriously. That's all the advice I'd have to say about that. We're just 2 dudes. These are our opinions, and I'd like to think that they're based in experience and doing things for a number of years now. And again, I was where folks that might maybe use some of these phrases. I mean, at one time, I didn't know why I chose a particular gun that I did, or carried in a certain holster in a certain position, or why I did the things that I did, because I wasn't there yet. I wasn't experienced enough. I hadn't challenged myself enough. I carried a 45 at one time because, and this was one of our cliches, because, well, it's a bigger bullet, therefore more knockdown power. Like, that was the extent of my understanding at the time. We'll save that one for another time, perhaps. So anyway, there you go. 7 cliches we wish were dead.
Yeah.
And if you loved this episode, hated this episode, feel free to let us know. podcast@concealedcarry.com. You're always welcome to email us. We do hope that ultimately everything we do on the podcast is helpful for people out there. We won't reach everybody. We won't help everybody. Just because that's the way it goes, but we do our best. As we get ready to sign on out of here, we need to announce our weekly prize winner. We give the prizes out each week. You got to sign up at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. This week we're giving away 9mm dummy rounds. I got a bunch of them in this little baggie here.
Very nice.
We're giving away a pack of those. I think it's a 5-pack of 9mm dummy rounds from Ready Up Gear. And next week, we're giving away a Draw Like a Pro course, a free copy, a free download of the Draw Like a Pro training course. So make sure you sign up at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. Matthew, who is the lucky winner of this week's dummy rounds?
The lucky winner is Kenneth W. You are the winner.
W or Ken W. Well, congratulations, Ken. We'll get those to you right away as soon as you respond to the email coming to your inbox. So that brings us to a conclusion of another fantastic episode. We'll shout out one more time to our podcast episode sponsors. That is Gunfighter Gun Oil. You can find them at gunfighteroil.com. Also Barrel Block, which you can find at barrelblock.com. Barrelblock.com. And until next time, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.